It was an ordinary day in Washington until Senator John Kennedy dropped a bombshell on national television. Viewers weren't ready for what was about to happen. In a live hearing that was supposed to be routine, Kennedy turned the spotlight directly onto Representative Adam Schiff, asking pointed questions that shook the room. What unfolded in the next few minutes would change the public's perception of Schiff forever. It was a moment that would echo across political lines. Senator John Kennedy dropped a bombshell on national television. Viewers weren't ready for what was about to happen. In a live hearing that was supposed to be routine, Kennedy turned the spotlight directly onto Representative Adam Schiff, asking pointed questions that shook the room. What unfolded in the next few minutes would change the public's perception of Schiff forever. It was an ordinary day that ended with chaos in the political world and explosive reactions online. Washington until Senator John Kennedy dropped a bombshell on national television. Viewers weren't ready for what was about to happen. In a live hearing that was supposed to be routine, Kennedy turned the spotlight directly onto Representative Adam Schiff, asking pointed questions that shook the room. What unfolded in the next few minutes would change the public's perception of Schiff forever. It was the start of a very different political conversation than anyone expected. Kennedy opened with a question that seemed simple but carried weight. Do you remember what you said in the Intelligence Committee briefing of July 2016? Schiff looked momentarily frozen. Cameras zoomed in, and social media began buzzing. The air in the chamber thickened. Schiff's hesitation was obvious. Kennedy smiled slightly, then continued. What followed was a carefully laid out timeline of actions, decisions, and inconsistencies that Schiff had not planned to explain that day. The audience, both in the chamber and across the internet, watched as Kennedy referenced Schiff's private communications that had recently been leaked. These messages painted a very different picture of the congressman than his public statements. They implied prior knowledge of surveillance activities and possible withholding of crucial information. Schiff, usually confident and controlled, looked visibly shaken. The tension was not just political, it was personal and deeply unsettling for everyone watching. Kennedy didn't rely on opinion. He brought facts, documents, timelines, and quotes. The evidence wasn't just strong, it was damning. He referenced statements Schiff had made under oath and compared them with contradicting internal memos. Every inconsistency widened the credibility gap. Schiff attempted to explain, but his answers were vague. For every defense he offered, Kennedy had a news source or document to counter it. The trap was closing. One of the most intense moments came when Kennedy displayed a set of emails between Schiff and former intelligence officials discussing strategies to shape the public narrative. The implication was clear. Schiff may have been involved in managing not just information flow, but perception itself. The emails mentioned specific talking points, timing of leaks, and suggestions on which topics to avoid in hearings. Viewers were stunned. It no longer looked like oversight, it looked like orchestration. As the revelations continued, Kennedy shifted the focus to Schiff's financial disclosures. Citing official records, he highlighted unusual transactions during politically sensitive periods. One such instance included a sudden transfer of funds days before a major intelligence vote. Schiff claimed the transactions were routine, but Kennedy read aloud from an internal email suggesting otherwise. At that point, even some of Schiff's supporters seemed to lose confidence. Silence took over the hearing room. Throughout the hearing, Kennedy maintained a calm, almost surgical tone. He didn't interrupt or shout. He simply presented information in a way that forced the audience to reach its own conclusions. Schiff, by contrast, became increasingly defensive. His tone shifted. He accused Kennedy of politicizing the process. But those watching could tell the problem wasn't Kennedy's questions, it was Schiff's answers, or lack thereof. The hearing wasn't just about one man. It was about transparency, integrity, and whether powerful people should be held accountable. Kennedy closed the session by asking a final question. Do you believe that public trust can be maintained if elected officials operate behind closed doors with conflicting agendas? Schiff looked up, paused, and gave a non-answer. The damage, however, was already done. America had seen enough to start asking its own questions. As the footage from the hearing went viral, major news outlets scrambled to catch up. Networks replayed key moments. Analysts debated what it all meant. Conservative commentators claimed vindication. Liberal voices tried to downplay the incident. But most agreed on one point. This was a turning point. Adam Schiff had faced one of the most aggressive interrogations of his career. The court of public opinion was now fully engaged, and the fallout had only just begun. Social media exploded with clips and commentary. Hashtags like Schiff exposed and Kennedy bomb trended for days. Influencers, political analysts, and even celebrities weighed in. Some praised Kennedy's courage. Others demanded further investigation into Schiff's conduct. Memes flooded Twitter and Instagram, turning key hearing moments into viral content. The issue transcended politics. It became part of culture. People who had never followed congressional hearings were now asking, who is Adam Schiff really, and what has he been hiding? Pressure mounted on Schiff to issue a public statement. 3 days after the hearing, he appeared before reporters. His tone was firm, but his words seemed rehearsed. He denied wrongdoing, insisted all actions were legal, and accused Kennedy of staging a political stunt. But reporters were not satisfied. They pushed harder. When asked directly about specific leaks and contradictions, Schiff dodged. The press conference, meant to contain the damage, only added fuel to the fire. In response to Schiff's comments, Senator Kennedy released an unedited video of the full hearing, complete with annotations and cited sources. It was a bold move. Within 24 hours, the video gained over 5 million views. Viewers praised its transparency. Kennedy didn't just accuse, he proved. The detailed breakdown helped people follow the complex narrative. Every minute built more context, and the annotations made it hard to deny the facts. Schiff's credibility took another hit. Even longtime Schiff allies began to shift their tone. Some quietly distanced themselves, while others called for an internal ethics review. The Democratic leadership remained largely silent, a sign of strategic caution. But behind closed doors, tensions were rising. Several House members reportedly held emergency meetings. Questions were asked about whether Schiff's continued presence in key committees was politically sustainable. For the first time in years, Schiff's status was no longer guaranteed. The story soon crossed the ocean. International news outlets picked up the headlines. European journalists explored the implications for global intelligence cooperation. In Canada, the UK, and Australia, analysts speculated on what this meant for upcoming bilateral discussions. Schiff, once seen as a powerful figure on the world stage, now faced scrutiny abroad. The incident wasn't just an American scandal. It had become a case study in political accountability for democracies around the world. Back in the U.S., grassroots activists seized the moment. Petitions began circulating online demanding Schiff's resignation. Town hall meetings filled with angry voters. Talk radio exploded with callers questioning how this had gone unnoticed for so long. Conservative groups launched campaigns calling for investigations. Meanwhile, progressive activists debated whether defending Schiff was worth the political cost. The rift wasn't just between parties, it was within them. Schiff had become a polarizing figure, even among his base. Kennedy's team made no further public statements. They let the facts speak. That strategy worked. Without grandstanding, Kennedy allowed the public to dissect the situation. His office quietly released further documentation, FOIA requests, testimony transcripts, and financial filings. They even opened a portal for whistleblowers to submit new information anonymously. The investigation wasn't just continuing, it was expanding. The web around Schiff was growing, and the silence from his camp only made it louder. Late-night hosts joked about the scandal, but even their humor carried a serious edge. This wasn't just politics, one said. This was Shakespeare in a suit. The metaphor stuck. The story had drama, betrayal, and exposure. It captivated audiences not because of party politics, but because of the sheer audacity of the revelations. Schiff, once the questioner in past high-profile hearings, had become the questioned. And people couldn't look away. Congressional aides reported rising stress in Schiff's office. Staff members came in earlier and left later. Media requests were denied. PR consultants were brought in. Lawyers reviewed past statements. It was all damage control. Yet the more they tried to plug holes, the more new leaks emerged. Disgruntled insiders began speaking off the record. Some said they had warned Schiff about overreaching. Others simply expressed disappointment. The loyalty Schiff had once commanded was slipping. The final blow came from an unlikely source, a retired intelligence officer who testified under oath before a Senate subcommittee. In a closed-door session later leaked to the press, he confirmed that Schiff had received classified warnings about the misuse of surveillance tools but downplayed their urgency in public. The revelation tied everything together. Kennedy's accusations weren't speculative, they were confirmed. Schiff's version of events no longer held weight. The implications were undeniable. Despite the mounting pressure, Schiff refused to resign. In a fiery interview, he doubled down on his innocence, calling the entire controversy a smear campaign. He claimed Kennedy was targeting him for political gain. But viewers weren't buying it. Polls showed a rapid decline in public trust. Even neutral voters expressed skepticism. The media narrative had turned. What was once a defense became defiance, and it only deepened the controversy further. The Ethics Committee eventually announced a formal inquiry. Schiff responded by tweeting that he welcomed the process. But critics quickly pointed out the irony. This was the same Schiff who had championed oversight over others. Now he was the subject of the very process he once weaponized. Kennedy issued no comment. The Senate remained quiet. But behind the scenes, many knew the tides had changed. This wasn't ending quietly. It was just the beginning of a reckoning. The fallout continued into the next legislative session. Schiff was removed from 2 intelligence-related subcommittees. The official reason cited pending ethics concerns. Schiff's allies called it political retaliation, but others said it was overdue. Staff turnover in his office increased. Donors pulled back. Editorial boards that once endorsed him began to question his judgment. A once unshakable figure now stood on political quicksand, unsure where the next collapse might occur. Capitol insiders now openly speculated about Schiff's future. Would he resign? Retire? Pivot to media or law? None of those options looked easy. Schiff had built his career on the idea of being a moral compass in government. But the compass had spun. The credibility he once used to challenge presidents was now under challenge itself. In politics, perception is everything. And the perception of Adam Schiff had changed, possibly forever. What started as a routine hearing transformed into a political earthquake. Senator Kennedy's methodical exposure of Adam Schiff was more than just a debate. It was a moment of truth that forced the nation to confront deeper questions about transparency, trust, and power. Whether you agree with Kennedy or not, the facts he presented left a mark. Schiff's image has changed. And so has the conversation in America. The story isn't over, but its impact is already undeniable. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real political analysis. Let the truth be heard. Your voice matters.